Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beatles Dustino coming at you again today with yet another video. And we're gonna do it'll be my third one, I guess, on my Dustino Score album reviews. So we're gonna get another Dustino Score going here with my first Beatles album review, and I'm gonna kind of go down the line. So we're starting with Please Please Me, and we're gonna go down basically right down the line, all the way to the most recent release. And I'm going to try my best to get everything kind of in order and kind of go that way. I kind of messed it up with starting with Look Up, as I think was my first Dustino Score album review ever. So now we're going to kind of get it settled with this. I might redo Look Up too, just looking at everything here. But before we get too much further with this, let's get on with Please Please Me's album review. Yeah, we're starting at the beginning. We're going to start with Please Please Me. And I've really been listening to it a lot the last week or two. Not that I'm not very familiar with this album to begin with, but, just kind of getting it in my head and, let's get, a proper review out on it. And yeah, I've really been enjoying my time listening to it. I've actually listened to, this is, of course, my in mono copy. I don't have a vinyl copy of this. But yeah, I do have the in mono copy here out. Best way to kind of show the album art and everything, I guess. So that would be the main one. I've been listening to actually the 87 release, this one, the 09 mono, and then the 09 stereo. I've kind of been listening to them all back to back to back and really getting a good feel for all of them. Not going to go too much on the review of that aspect of it, but I would say this in mono version is probably the best sounding to my ears. I'm not a big audiophile, so I'm not going to be like, but just what I could hear listening to it in my car. Yes, that's probably the worst place to listen to it, but it's pretty good stereo in that car of mine. I know that I got that out for the season again. But yeah, I've been listening to it in there. Luckily, I've got that rolling CD player to go with me now. So another part of why we're getting the reviews, because that's where I do listen to the most of my music, is driving to and from work and jamming out to the tunes on the way. So, kind of getting it that way. But yeah, I would say that in mono really turned out great. But let's do some kind of rundown of the album here itself. It was originally released on March 22nd of 1963. Recorded, of course, a single day pretty much on February 11th of 1963. Pretty much a live recording. Not a lot of overdubs on this album. There is some, but not a lot. It did have some singles with it, which would be Love Me Do, which was backed by P.S. I Love You. These all came out before it. This is where you're going to get Ringo's version of that on Love Me Do. And then Please Please Me, backed with Ask Me Why, came out a little before this. And, of course, several of those songs are on this album also. Of course, with formats on this, we had several. We did have it obviously available in mono and stereo, as we already kind of covered there. LP, compact cassette, reel-to-reel, 8-track, and CD are all different multimedia formats that it's been available on. Of course, when it came out on CD, it originally came out on one of the 4 albums that came out strictly with the mono release. So this, when the in mono came out here, wasn't really new on CD for it, but the stereo was. So that was pretty interesting on that when that came out in 09. The stereo recording on that, it really does need a remix. I really hope that this does get a remix coming up soon. In these recent remixes that they've been doing, especially now that they can do that demixing and then remix it from there. Pretty fascinating technology that they've got there, and I think this album would really be great from that, because it seems like everything is right over in my car there. Kind of the vocals are all over my right shoulder, the drums are all in front of my to my left in front of me, so it's kind of a weird stereo setup that they got going there. But kind of moving on to, of course, there's been several other versions of this with the catalog not really being solidified at the beginning there. So kind of running down here, we got the Beatles Story in Italy. I'll have the album cover up there, same track list, but just alternate album cover. So that's kind of interesting how we had all these alternate album covers. In the US here, of course, we had Introducing the Beatles, which would be kind of our version of Please Please Me. Kind of a truncated track list, but pretty much Please Please Me on that. And of course, a different album cover. Canada had their version was Twist and Shout, kind of an alternate track list, and obviously a different cover on that. Germany had Please Please Me and Andre Nuller. Different album art on that completely. Kind of a really interesting album art with that one. Of course, it did top the UK chart starting in May of 1963. Sat there for 30 weeks until it was replaced by their follow-up album with the Beatles, which that should be the next album review coming up, obviously. And then also just kind of another little accolade to it. We got Rolling Stone magazine did place this on the 500 greatest albums of all time. In 2012, it placed 39th on that list. I know they've done a couple of different lists, so it might have kind of went in a couple of different places there. Just kind of the rundown on that so far. So let's get into my actual review. And, you know, we're all pretty familiar with this one, you know, great cover on it and everything, and not the greatest, as we'll get to in that. And my last video last week, you just saw I did my album ranking, cover rankings, and that one was pretty low, but it's still iconic any which way you look at it. Any Beatles album is going to be iconic, pretty much. But yeah, let's just run down the track list, starting with the first track here, which is I Saw Her Standing There. I've always thought this is, of any band, anywhere, one of the greatest openings. And then as we get down the road here, down the Abbey Road, which should technically be their true ender, because Let It Be, yes, it did come out after Abbey Road, but everything was recorded way before it. So for Get Back, and it ended up being Let It Be. We all know the story on that too. But I always thought the Beatles had such a great, for their career, that opening and that ending, with And in the End, The Love You Make. You know, obviously off Abbey Road, but of course off of this one, as we're going to talk about. 1, 2, 3, 4! Paul kicking it off there. What a way to kick it off. Great rocker, too, to open it up with. And Paul's bass on this. Wow, when I re-listened to it to kind of get my little scores with it here, just before I did the video here, his bass line in there is more of a lead than the guitars on that. I always thought he didn't really get that going until kind of that midpoint on to their career there, and I suppose it is kind of his song and his instrument there, so yeah, I guess he would kind of take the lead on it, right? I don't know why I've never really noticed that. I always thought he didn't really develop that really great bass signature of his until, you know, the later career there. Is Sgt. Pepper's on, basically. Well, even I'd say I'd go as Rubber Soul on, I guess, but you know, yeah, that's pretty cool. Why I never really paid that much attention to it before, because I Saw Her Standing There. Absolutely love it. Love it so much, as a matter of fact, it's getting a 9.5 on this. So, let's move on to the next one, though. Track 2 will be Misery. I'm going to try to go through these a little faster here now. But yeah, good follow-up track to the I Saw Her Standing There opener there. Fun to sing along with the harmonies is my note on this, and I'm giving that one a 7. So track 3 will be Anna, Go to Him. Their first cover out of 6 total on this album. Really swings in the chorus, I wrote as my note, and a great John vocal. And I'm giving this one a 7 on that. It's pretty good for a cover on that. Up next, another cover, the second cover on the album here of the 6. And of the 14 tracks, so almost half of it is covers. But yeah, this will be Chains, which would be the first George vocal on this one. Pretty solid Goth and King tune there is what I wrote as my notes. But I've given this one a 6. It just kind of sits there. It's great, you know, whatever. It's just solid tune, great tune for a great album, I guess. So number 5 will be Boys. Of course, the third cover on this, and the first Ringo vocal, and the only Ringo vocal on this one. And, you know, fun song. Funny Ringo singing it with the boys, oh boys, da da. But yeah, I really noticed how just listening to it now really kind of putting more of that critical ear on it than just you know, music to listen to ear. Yeah, his drumming really shined on this, and I don't know if it was because they're featuring the drummer as the vocal on it, and they really, you know, kind of put his drums to the forefront, or what. But yeah, I really thought his drumming was, you really could hear the drums on it. But I'm giving this a 6 again on this one. And speaking of 6, we're on to track 6, which would be Ask Me Why. And my only really note here is has a real middle album feel. is what I wrote. Of course, this one's back to a Lennon-McCartney, McCartney-Lennon, however, which way we want to go with it on this. I think McCartney-Lennon is how they credited it on this. Let's see. Yep, McCartney-Lennon. So I thought I remembered that. But yeah, just kind of a real middle of the album feel. A good song, but nothing fantastic. And it's getting a 6. So track 6 is getting a 6. So moving on to track 7, which would be the A-side closer. It would be Please Please Me. And I did write, as a matter of fact, on my note, a great A-side closer. Love the harmonies in it. Can really hear the Roy Orbison kind of influence on it. Always love the how dynamically it builds at the end. That kind of right as they're kind of closing the song out, it seems like it just kind of really pushes up with the production there, and how it just, the dynamics of the song just really come out between the instruments and the vocals and everything. It seems like there's a little shift in there too, which is really kind of weird. Some with a little added reverb right at the end, which kind of gives it that I don't know, that dynamic feel, or whatever it is. But yeah, I've always kind of liked that. And Please Please Me is getting a pretty solid 9 on this one. So always a song I've really enjoyed. And obviously the album's title song there. So there we go. So kicking off side B, we got Love Me Do, which of course would be the single. And this is I got to get this right here, the Andy White version. Of course, Andy White is on drums. Ringo is on the tambourine. Real simple song, but fun how John's lead turns into Paul's voice for him to play that harmonica. I've always thought that was really interesting. It took me a long time to catch, too, that Paul really mimics John's voice really strong in this, because it took me a long time to figure that out. It's been a several long time back that I've noticed it, but when I first started listening to this I always thought it was the same vocal there, and then it's like one day it kind of just hit me. I'm like, wait, that's Paul. Wow, okay. But yeah, great B-side opener on that, and I'm giving it an 8, even though it is pretty simple little tune, but it's a pretty iconic little tune too. So moving on to track number 9, and we got P.S. I Love You, which I wrote as my note here. Yeah. Paul's song through and through. It really is. Love his vocal on this one, and I don't got much more notes on it. It's just pretty solid mid album song there, and I'm giving it a 7 on that. Track 10, and this one might get a little pushback, I don't know. But it's Baby It's You. Baby I Love You, I almost said. No, Baby It's You. Baby It's You. All right, and this is the 4th cover on the album, and a really great John vocal on this. And I've always loved this song. One of the albums that really kicked me off into my Beatles love, I came into it right about 94, actually. So what came out in 94? The BBC sessions, BBC Volume 1 there, and Live at the BBC. And that was one of the first albums I did pick up of theirs, especially for me that early on, to pick up a double album like that, because that was really expensive when that first came out. To pick that up, and also that it was that very early stuff that I really fell in love with that to start out with. But I loved it, listening to it, because I loved getting their personalities with the radio announcers and stuff, kind of the DJs kind of, interacting with them and that, and their goofiness, and their, the DJs even had fun with it all. Which in that one, always the sha la 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 that the BBC announcer thought the song was called. But I've always loved this song. It's one of my favorite covers of theirs. Absolutely love this song. Love most versions of it. Another version of it I always say to go check out, and don't get confused when I say this, but there's a version of it by the group called Smith, and I'll try to find, if I can find like a single album or single sleeve or something of it by Smith, not the Smiths, just Smith. They were out in the 60s. It might have been really their only hit, or at least known of song of theirs. But I've always loved that version of it too. But it's just a solid song, and it could be so many different interpretations. And I really like the Beatles on it. I love Smith's version, not the Smiths. Got to be clear on that. But yeah, I'm giving Baby It's You an 8. We got to go on the ranking here. That's what we're here for, not to discuss the different versions of the song. All right, so moving on to track 11, and we got Do You Want to Know a Secret? Let's see. This is the second George vocal on the album. Solid tune, but getting in the middle of the B-side slump with this one. I kind of love that reverb on the, it sounds like Ringo's kind of hitting the drumsticks together type thing, and they put that kind of reverb on it towards the end there. I think that's a really good little effect. I think that's really kind of cool in there. And I'm giving this one, though, a 7 on this one. So moving on to A Taste of Honey, the 5th cover of 6 on here. Great Paul vocal, very classic Beatles cover, I said. Not much more I'm really going to say on that one. It's just, it's very much a signature song of theirs, even though it's a cover, but I'm not really going to give it too high of a score here either, but nice solid 7 on it. Then we got the second to last song here, and we got There's a Place at number 13. That's where its place is, at number 13. There we go. And a little bit of a pick-me-up from the last few songs there, and before the end of the album. Great harmonies, great sing-along type song with it there. I always have fun singing along, especially with the backing vocals on these. Solid 7 is what I'm going to give that one also. And then we're going to follow it up with that last of the 6 of the covers on here, and what a cover it is. And track 14, of course, is Twist and Shout. Fantastic lead vocal by John. So fantastic, he totally shredded his vocal cords right out on it. I believe they took it in the one take, and that was it. They weren't doing it anymore. And yeah, he gave it all. I think that was the last song they recorded of the day, too. Obviously, his vocals were out. I don't know how they were going to go on anymore there. Yeah, it's just a really great song, and arguably one of their best covers of all the covers that they do. It is a true signature Beatles song, even though they didn't pen it. And I've always loved it. Every time that song comes on, you just got to love it. I love it in Ferris Bueller, him dancing in the street to it there and everything. But yeah, just a true signature sound of the early Beatles there, and just an awesome album closer, I wrote as my note there, and it's getting a 9.5. So there we go. That's the rundown of the albums there and the tracks. So adding up all the scores there and dividing it by the 14 tracks that we got, we're getting a 7.4 out of 10 for the songs there. So the next score in the Dustino Score, is kind of the flow and the vibe of the album. Does it got a really good flow, a really good vibe? You get those kind of low dip points going up to your highs as you're kind of going through, the end of the A side, the end of the B side, the end of the album, the beginning of the album, so forth and so on. Yes, I think we really got a great little sandwich of an album here. Opening with I Saw Her Standing There, which got a 9.5 score, and ending with Twist and Shout, which also got a 9.5 score. And then just pretty solid songs in the middle there. So I think we got a really good, solid, flowing, vibing album. And yeah, those little ups and downs really dip in right. And I'd say this has got a great flowing vibe to it. So I'm giving it a 10. 10 out of 10 on that. Next up, we got the packaging and the artwork. I already kind of touched on that. Now, it's quite iconic. Yeah, it's not, I don't think, their best album cover. And packaging-wise, we got, pretty basic back, nice little write-up there and everything. No fancy inner sleeves or anything. Even the label isn't, it's just pretty standard EMI Parlophone label. So nothing like crazy on that, and pretty much carried on that way with all the other releases, the reel-to-reel, the compact cassette, so forth and so on. The CD releases once they came out. So I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 on that. And then as we were talking, the package is available. Well, yes, you do got almost every imaginable form of multimedia, physical media available with this album. You got streaming nowadays, if you want to count that. You got CDs, you got, and multiple variations on the CDs, at least 3 different configurations you can get there. The standard one that first came out, the remastered ones here in mono and then stereo. You got reel-to-reel, you got 8-track, you got compact cassette, you've got LPs, you got the mono and the stereo option if you want that, so you do get a couple of different mixes. However, the one thing you don't have is that remix and that kind of super deluxe box that I think we're all kind of waiting for, and that's what'll get you a 10, is having that. But because you got all that other stuff, I'm giving this a 9. So it's gonna, a 9 out of 10 on the packages available. So if they ever get that super deluxe box with the remix and everything on there, I think we are going to give this a 10 then. Once that's available, with a nice hardback book and, a little bit of outtakes, stuff like that. But kind of adding up the score there all together, it's getting a 33.4 out of 40 for the true Dustino Score. And I was a little shocked on this. I've reviewed 3 albums with the Dustino Score. This is the 3rd one out of it. And the first one was Look Up, Ringo's newest album there. And that got a 32.36. I guess we could just round that up to 32.4. So just a little below it. Just a point below Please Please Me. And then the next one was Teddy Swims' new album, which was I've Tried Everything But Therapy Part 2. And that got a 33.46, which, again, we'll just round up to 33.5 out of 40. So a little bit above it. So, or almost tied with it in some ways. So, yeah, I don't know. Trying to work out the score, I don't know, was I a little too friendly on those first couple albums I reviewed? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to re-review I've Tried Everything But Therapy Part 2, but I will probably redo Look Up after I get through to the end there, as that should have been the true last one of the Beatles on this if I'm going in order of everything there. Anyways, that's where we're going to stand with Please Please Me, a 33.4 on the Dustino Score. So I'm really curious if this is going to kind of build as we go or stay pretty even. I got a feeling these first albums are going to stay pretty even. Let's kind of mark my words on this right now. I got a feeling on that right now. I've got a feeling. That's towards the end, though. All right. Anyways, we're going to get fully wrapping up before I get rambling here. But before we do that, I want to once again thank all my subscribers and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell so you know when I got my next video coming out, like my next album review, which will be with the Beatles. So stay tuned for that. Also, please give the video a like. If you've stuck around to this point, like I said, you must like it. So please give it a like and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know your thoughts on Please Please Me. How would you rank it? How would you what would your score be if you were kind of going with the Dustino Score, or do you got your own scoring? Let me know your thoughts on Please Please Me. Anyways, I'm going to get fully signing out. I am Beatle Dustino, signing out.